Okay guys, I'm back. I'm going to be opening my window as this loads, so...
Taking in the scene. To others, it might seem like an ice cream.
Yep.
To him, it was a treasure trove.
This is part 5, part 2, if you don't know about this, then go and watch it from part 1 all the way up to part 5, which is right here. And if you're new here, welcome. I have a few other parts of this go out there right now, so that's good. There we go. Got my fan on medium. Sunny out. Sun's setting, it's not too dark, so I'm just gonna leave my window open.
A whole gear, a functioning motor, or usable wire. He worked systematically.
Alright guys, if you don't know,
As the sun set
Acidon has died.
long shadows on the sand.
He died to pillagers.
To the brim.
This is his skull right here.
Brushed his hands together and headed home.
He's going to be staying in here
Dumped his findings onto his desk.
for quite some time. This is his memorial. I built a small cross over there for him. I put that block there just to try and basically try to put his head on there, but it wouldn't let me place dragon heads. So I won't be wasting any of him. He is going to a good cause. I have his scales. I have a lot of other things. Damn, I fucking need netherite. I mean, it's not that hard to find. It's just, damn it.
Instead of dwelling on
Oh, okay, that's
he
very
focused on what he could create.
Ooh. Now that I might actually have things for. Okay, I have one of those. I know I have emeralds. Who knows where? What's in here?
The first was a material analyzer, a portable scanner that would quickly identify trash from recoverable components. By detecting density, conductivity, and molecular integrity, it would allow him to process the wreckage with precision. The second was a more ambitious project.
But the voices in my head go do
A
do do
machine
do
that would
do
disassemble
do
unusable materials
do.
and recycle them into energy or raw materials. It was intricate, far more complex than anything he had ever constructed before, but the possibilities were too vast to ignore. Chapter 4.
As you can see, I have
focused expression,
drift.
long shadows across the cluttered desk.
I have stick drift. Very, very bad stick drift, so that's why I'm using the arrows.
The material analyzer was shaping up to be an essential tool for sorting useful parts from discarded materials. For someone with limited resources, it was a necessity. Izuku's fingers moved with mechanical precision, a soldering iron in one hand and tweezers in the other. He carefully attached the final wire, connecting a sensor node to the analyzer's main board.
Okay, there we go.
The smell of flux filled the air as he turned off the iron and leaned
How
back
much does it take to wear diamond armor?
The material analyzer was compact, no larger than a cell phone, featuring a screen that displayed data overlays and a scanning lens in the center.
It takes only level 16?
With a gentle hum. Lines of code scrolled across the screen,
What level am I
indicating that the
at
systems
now?
were online. He picked up a box of repair parts, taking a handful of salvaged
14.
wires,
Oh, okay, now I see what's wrong.
and broken capacitors. Holding the analyzer over
Seriously, only level 16, dude?
a soft blue
Level
beam swept over the
12,
objects,
okay, I can wear
and
my
data filled the
my
screen.
Corsair armor.
The device reported conductivity 32%, structural integrity compromised, material aluminum alloy degraded. Izuku ran his hand over the casing of the device, noting its operational status. However, he recognized that the algorithm needed refinement. The precision was not where it should be. He quickly jotted down notes
No, it's not here.
outlining ideas for optimization.
Helmet
It would
is
suffice for now.
right here.
With the analyzer operational, Izuku turned his attention to his most ambitious project
And pants are right here.
matter.
That is very good.
Blueprints for the device cluttered his desk, a chaotic web of schematics and equations. The concept was
Now I
straightforward
have
but
these for my
frustratingly
friends.
complex
They're
to execute.
basically
Disassemble waste
broken,
matter
but
and reassemble it into
still have
useful
them, so
energy
that's
or
good.
raw materials.
Only sleep
Days
at night.
blurred
Okay,
into
so it's
hours
not
as Izuku dedicated
technically
himself to the
night yet.
converter. His
So
focus was unwavering, each step precise as he constructed prototypes, experimented with energy streams, and fine-tuned power sources. The subtle whir of his tools echoed in the room, blending with the soft clinking of used components. Gradually, his workshop descended into organized chaos. Things scattered, tools placed haphazardly, and a cold cup of tea left
I'm gonna
forgotten
go
on
get
the work
another
surface.
dragon. I
By
will
the following
always
morning,
remember
he
Acidon.
noticed a pattern
He
in his
is
failures. Each test
he
failed
was
the
and
same
still
way.
is the best of the
Excessive
best.
energy loss during the conversion process and
26 to
irregular
apparently
breakdown
use
of molecules.
netherite,
The
so
converter could deconstruct
gonna
materials to their
go
most basic
get everything
elements,
out of
but
my
it struggled to
inventory, so
generate the energy needed to sustain the process. Izuku muttered to
give me
himself,
this. Yeah, I'm gonna make
frustration
another
creeping
chest.
into his voice as he analyzed the data on the screens. All variables were accounted for, yet the machine still failed to perform as expected. He disassembled the prototype and began anew, testing subsystems in isolation. He replaced a faulty component, redesigned the energy intake, and adjusted the output stabilizer. Each iteration showed slight improvement,
But the
but the
voices
core
in my
issue
head go.
persisted. After hours of soldering, Izuku stretched his cramped fingers. His eyes felt heavy, and his posture was
Fucking
rigid as he
thing.
leaned over the workbench. The converter
There we
hummed
go.
steadily,
Just go
a
put
constant
that up
reminder of how close he was to
over here.
success. The 11th model activated, its screen glowing with promising
Gotta
energy
keep that one
readings.
here because
Izuku stood,
broken
eyes
basically.
fixed on the machine as it processed a
I'm gonna
small piece
take
of
you.
scrap metal. The hum
I'm
intensified,
gonna go sleep.
vibrating through the surrounding tools. The energy readings climbed steadily, but then suddenly surged to alarming levels. Izuku swiftly
But the
engaged them.
voices in my head go.
Emergency cutoff, and the machine halted with a metallic snap. Smoke wafted from the input chamber,
Okay.
and he stared at the charred remnants of the test material. His expression remained unchanged, but his pencil tapped rhythmically against the
I'm
notebook.
gonna head out this
He
way.
reflected quietly, recognizing
Snapshot
that the issue
boards.
was not mechanical but rather related to energy dynamics. He was missing a fundamental concept. Driven by logic, Izuku knew he needed to research further. He sought information that surpassed his current understanding of physics and engineering. After securing his workshop, he made his way to the city library. The library was vast and silent, its
No, I don't
towering
make
shelves
mining,
filled with books
so I'm
on
just
countless subjects.
gonna be running around
Izuku
looking for a
navigated the
dragon.
aisles with purpose,
Somewhere,
flipping
I
through
don't know where, but
titles and collecting
somewhere,
anything
yes.
related to energy systems or material science. By the time he reached the theoretical physics section, his stack of books threatened to topple over.
I have one right
One
here.
book
I have
caught his
my
attention. Foundations
iron
of Quantum
sword.
Mechanics.
I have my
Its gilded
Corsair
letters
armor, which
faded
is
from years of use.
almost as good as
As he
diamond.
flipped
Just
through its pages, he observed
about
passages on waveform
1.5 armor bars off
and
diamond.
states of
So
energy. The potential of these
technically,
concepts overwhelmed him,
it's close.
reshaping his understanding of energy manipulation. His sharp mind processed the ideas with clarity. The gaps in his designs were not mechanical failures, but rather failures of vision. Energy was not a smooth flow. It existed in discrete packets,
Yep,
subject to
you gonna
variable
die.
effects. This realization clicked into place for him, the simplicity of understanding how elements fit together. Returning
I
to
need
his
this
workshop,
XP.
Izuku
Apparently they
immersed
gave a
himself in
lot,
the
but
quantum
that didn't
mechanics
give me
book,
shit.
correlating its insights with his
The
notes
babies
and
get to live
blueprints.
clearly because
He
I'm a
understood that
psychopath,
energy transfer
and I
was not
want
a
them to
simple
be
exchange.
orphans.
It involved quantum tunneling,
And I
resonance
also want them to
stabilization,
grow up so that
and
I could
state
kill them.
transitions. With this newfound knowledge, Izuku revised the blueprint for the renewable matter converter. His pencil moved gracefully across the page, crafting designs that adhered to principles of quantum coherence and energy efficiency. His
I need to turn this up a bit.
equations, each variable
There we go, now I can
meticulously
actually hear it.
calculated. The new model
I'm
was
just using it as
streamlined and
background noise.
effective,
I don't own
equipped
any
with
of the
quantum stabilizers and
videos
state
that I
regulators.
listen to
Izuku's focus remained unwavering as he
while
assembled the components.
recording.
Days passed
I just
without distinction,
like
yet
to
his
watch them,
determination remained
listen
unbroken.
to
As he
them,
made the final connection,
and I'm blabbering
Izuku
on again,
activated
of
the
course I
prototype.
am.
The device
Sorry, I
its
might
energy
blabber
output stable and consistent.
whenever
He
I get
placed a
started. I
small
just
piece
keep
of corroding metal
talking.
into the input chamber and initiated the process. A
I don't know
blue
if my
light enveloped
voice
the
is
material,
soothing or not. Can you
disintegrating it
guys
with
leave in the
precision.
comments if my voice
Energy
is a bit
levels rose
soothing?
steadily, and soon the operation concluded.
If you
The
can even
output
hear
chamber
me.
opened to reveal a small,
I mean,
pristine
I'm pretty
ingot
sure
of
you
raw
can.
metal. Izuku examined the ingot in his hands,
I
studying
hope.
its texture and composition. He noted in his journal that the parameters were optimal, with an efficiency rating of 98.7%. Chapter 5 begins the sun reflected off a sea of crushed metal and broken glass as Izuku knelt on the coarse sand. His material analyzer whirred quietly in his palm, an island of soothing precision amidst the devastation on the beach. The screen burst into life, revealing the object in front of him, a rusty, serrated pipe. Material, iron. Integrity, 78%. Processable. Izuku's gaze narrowed in satisfaction, and he tossed the pipe into the usable pile. To his right was a growing heap of worthless trash, bent wires,
Perfect.
broken plastics, and composites too far gone for his renewable matter converter to process.
Just as I
He
thought,
would
those
revisit
are
the pile
good.
when he improved, but for now, efficiency took precedence. The second object was a broken console screen, its jagged edges glinting in the sunlight. Izuku adjusted the scanner to obtain a more accurate reading. Material, mixed silicates. Integrity, 21%. Processable. Limited. Energy cost, high. He frowned, deciding it wasn't worth the trouble, and placed it into the discard pile. This exercise was not merely about saving materials. It was about honing his judgment, ensuring that every decision was made with careful consideration. The beach hummed with subdued purpose, the whir of the renewable matter converter barely audible in the distance. The machine worked diligently, breaking down unusable materials into dense, energy-rich blocks. It wasn't as efficient or quick as Izuku wished, but it was a work in progress, just like everything else in his life. Izuku stepped back, critically assessing the skeletal structure of his workshop.
Nah, there isn't good
Steel
loot here.
beams gathered from discarded ruins provided the main support, and bolted panels acted as makeshift walls. It was not ideal, but it was his, a tangible representation of his relentless drive. He wiped sand from his hands and looked up at the sky, noting the sun lowering on the horizon. The burnished orange color indicated how late it was becoming.
Just to be.
He didn't want to risk his luck. He knew he couldn't be gone for too long. As soon as Izuku entered the house, he could hear the cheerful voices of his family ringing out from the living room. He paused in the hallway, just out of view, listening in. His mother asked Himari about her training, her voice bright and proud. Himari responded enthusiastically, sharing how she was
Village.
improving
Probably
in
no
using her quirk
dragon.
and even managed a proper punch during sparring. Izuku could almost hear All Might's thunderous laugh in response, encouraging her to keep it up. Izuku's expression remained unchanged as he walked down the corridor, his steps silent on the wooden floorboards. He slipped into his room, unseen, the door softly clicking shut behind him. His bedroom was small but highly organized, with blueprints covering the walls, each detailing his inventions meticulously. Notebooks filled with figures and alterations sat in neat piles on the desk.
Yeah, what's he
alongside
talking about? A
small
lot of.
selection of tools and half-built gadgets.
That's
Sitting
what he
down,
meant by a lot of
Izuku retrieved his
XP.
notes from the previous session and turned to a diagram of the pulse generator upgrade. His pencil danced above the paper as he made calculations to correct the inefficiencies he had observed during the last test. Below him, the discussion about Himari's training continued, the noise fading as he became engrossed in his task. The following day, Izuku sat at the back of the class, his notebook laid out in front of him. As the teacher lectured on Newtonian mechanics, his mind wandered. His pencil glided silently, sketching the shape of a new device while figures filled the margins, outlining energy yield, field stabilization
Well, that's
factors,
deadly.
and potential points of failure. In his other hand, he held a quantum mechanics textbook borrowed from the school library. Each line he read sparked new ideas, which he quickly jotted down. His objective was straightforward: to enhance the energy shield prototype to withstand increased levels of stress while remaining efficient. The teacher's voice cut through his concentration, calling out his name. Izuku regarded the teacher with a neutral expression and acknowledged the request to solve a problem on the board. He approached the front of the room, mentally computing the kinetic energy equations before writing the solution in careful lines. When he returned to his seat, Whispers erupted around him. Some classmates speculated about his confidence, while Himari carefully defended him, reminding them of his quirkless status. The room chuckled, but Izuku remained unfazed, his pencil continuing its work, his focus undeterred. When Izuku returned to the beach, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. His backpack felt heavier than usual, filled with equipment and parts he had salvaged from the day's collection. He immediately got to work, securing panels and bracing the frame of his workshop. The generator purred quietly as he connected it to power his lights and equipment, filling the room with a steady glow. With the workshop coming together, Izuku concentrated on the pulse generator, determined to address its remaining shortcomings.
All for the love of you.
Chicken toe taps.
Hello there, Wolf. Sorry, don't have any bones. If I did, I would definitely tame you.
Treat yourself to big savings
Oh, no, you don't.
pieces during Raymore and Flanagan's anniversary sale. Get up to $1,000 off sectionals, including the fan favorite Cityscape. Celebrate and save during the anniversary sale at Raymore and Flanagan.
What spawns here? No, okay, I don't like you. You have very long range.
Shortcomings. The
And
previous
it's
test had
very,
revealed
very
instability
annoying.
at higher frequencies, and he knew he couldn't afford such vulnerabilities. He adjusted the modulator, retuned the connections, and refined the power output. When the device activated with a faint hum, Izuku felt a rush of excitement. He pointed at a pile of sand, eager to observe its performance. The pulse spread out, sending the sand flying in a controlled eruption. The motion was smoother than ever, the energy more concentrated. He noted the improvements: stability enhanced, efficiency raised by 12%. More adjustments were still needed, but he was already considering ways to enhance the next version. By the time Izuku exited the workshop, night had fully set in. With his bag slung over his shoulder and his devices secured, he strode purposefully through the empty streets. The suburb grew darker and grittier as he ventured deeper, the light of street lamps replaced by dim bulbs and fleeting silhouettes. He turned a corner and halted. In front of him stood a group of thugs leaning against an old building, their tones low and coarse. Izuku remained calm, his expression serene as he walked toward them. One thug caught his eye, narrowing his gaze. The thug questioned Izuku's presence, while another advanced, sneering at him. Chapter 6 begins. The night sky stretched above Izukiyagi, veiled in faint clouds that obscured the stars. He moved at a hurried pace, each step deliberate, his bag secure on his shoulder. The weight inside it wasn't just tools or gadgets, it was potential. Every device had been carefully crafted and upgraded in the crucible of his workshop. Tonight wasn't a
Where do you think I should go?
It was data collection and validation. As the streets grew darker,
I'm gonna just continue
the hum of city
going
lights
straight, I
faded
guess.
into distant murmurs. Izuku adjusted his path,
Normal
steering
speed, normal
toward the
haste for
quieter,
Generation 2
more
and Mark
decrepit
Breathing 2.
part of town.
Okay, it's a bit disappointing, but
Overhead cast
okay.
erratic shadows, but Izuku remained calm. He had scouted this area thoroughly, and the alleyway he chose led to a dead end he
That's
could control.
quite
The faint
good.
shuffle of footsteps behind him confirmed it. He glanced over his shoulder just enough to see them, a group of 4 men emerging from the shadows. Their laughter and coarse voices echoed through the narrow street. One of them called out to
I
him,
believe
his
this
tone
might be
laced with
house,
mockery, questioning where he thought he was going. Izuku
or this
didn't
is a
respond.
brand new one.
Instead, he subtly quickened his pace, leading them deeper into the alley. The thugs followed, their confidence growing
thank
with
you.
every step. The leader barked at him, his voice harsher now, as the sound of heavy boots grew louder. Izuku reached the dead end, stopping a meter from the
Yeah,
chain
no, I'm
link
not getting
fence.
my venue
He
done,
turned
you can't
slowly,
tell.
his expression cold and unreadable. He set his bag down with meticulous care, kneeling to unzip it. The leader, a wiry man with a scar running down his cheek, smirked, suggesting he had something valuable inside. Another thug added that he probably thought he was a mechanic or something. Izuku remained silent, his hands moving with practiced precision as he retrieved the pulse generator. The device hummed faintly, its glow casting an eerie light on the alley walls. The leader squinted at the strange gadget, confused about what it was. Without a word, Izuku pressed the trigger. A shockwave burst forth, rippling through the air with a low-frequency thrum. The scar-faced leader stumbled, his balance thrown off as the force hit him squarely. Behind him, his companions winced and staggered, clutching at their heads as the pulse disrupted their equilibrium. Izuku didn't rush forward. Instead, he reached into his pocket and retrieved a notebook, jotting down observations as the thugs recovered. The pulse generator proved effective within 6 meters, causing disruption of inner ear balance. A delay in secondary recovery was
Ooh,
noted,
yes, I need
suggesting
this.
adjustments to the emitter frequency
Maybe not
for
right now, but I
faster neural
definitely
disruption.
do need it.
The wiry thug with the blade was the first to recover, his face contorted with rage. He lunged forward, the blade gleaming in the faint light. Izuku calculated the trajectory instantly, diagonal slash aimed at his upper torso. He sidestepped with surgical precision, his hand darting to his grapple line. The cord shot out, wrapping tightly around the thug's wrist. Izuku yanked hard, forcing the man off balance and into the brick wall. The blade clattered to the ground as Izuku tightened the line further, immobilizing his target. He released the cord abruptly, letting the thug collapse to the ground, dazed. Turning his attention to the heavy-set man charging at him, Izuku activated the shockwave gauntlet. A quick twist of his wrist adjusted the output, and he drove his fist forward in a calculated arc. The kinetic burst erupted on contact, sending the man flying backward into a stack of rusted barrels. The metallic clang reverberated through the alley as the barrels toppled, burying the thug in a pile of debris. Izuku paused to observe the results, noting the distance traveled by his opponent and the level of destruction caused. The shockwave gauntlet demonstrated effective range and force output, with tests against reinforced targets pending. The brass knuckles thug hesitated, his confidence wavering as he watched his comrades fall one by one. His gaze darted between Izuku's impassive face and the glowing devices in his hands. He stepped forward, raising his fists, challenging Izuku to see how he would handle the situation. Izuku didn't wait for the man to strike. He activated the energy shield, a translucent barrier flickering to life on his forearm. The thug's punch connected with the shield, the impact dispersing harmlessly across its surface. Sparks flew as the bronze made contact, but Izuku remained steady. He shifted his stance, using the shield to shove the thug backward before
Ooh,
deactivating
that's
it.
actually pretty
The man
good.
stumbled, and Izuku followed up with a calculated kick to his knee, forcing him to the ground. The energy shield proved to have minimal power consumption and satisfactory impact resistance. The scar-faced leader, now recovered, grabbed a discarded pipe from the ground and swung it wildly. Izuku ducked, the pipe whooshing past his head. With one swift motion, he activated the sonic disruptor, its high-pitched frequency cutting through the air. The leader dropped the pipe, clutching at his ears as the device overloaded his senses. Izuku stepped forward, delivering a precise blow to the man's sternum with the gauntlet, causing him to gasp for breath as he fell to the ground. The sonic disruptor's frequency output was
If you
verified,
can't tell, I'm a
adjustments required
slow
for
reader.
prolonged exposure to prevent overheating. Izuku
It
scanned the
hurts my
scene,
brain when I
noting the
read.
positions of the fallen thugs. The alley was silent now, save for their groans and the faint hum of his devices. He knelt once more, pen in hand, and began writing down his final observations. The efficiency of his combat was satisfactory, with energy consumption levels stable across all devices. Areas for improvement were identified in the grapple line and sonic disruptor, with future tests required to assess long-term device durability. He stood, his calm gaze sweeping over the defeated group. There was
Where'd
no
my sword
anger,
just go?
no satisfaction, only a clinical detachment. Izuku reached
No,
down,
because seriously, I
retrieving
need
his
that.
bag and securing his gadgets. As he turned to leave, the scar-faced leader managed to croak out a question about who he was. Izuku glanced over his shoulder, his face expressionless, and simply stated that he was efficient. Without another word, he disappeared into the shadows, leaving the thugs broken and bewildered. Back at his workshop, Izuku carefully disassembled the sonic disruptor, examining its components for signs of
I
stress.
put it in pot.
The
Of course, I
faint
put it in
glow of
pot.
his work lamp illuminated the organized chaos of his workspace, blueprints, tools, and spare parts scattered across the table. He made notes for adjustments, already envisioning the next iteration. Each confrontation was a step forward. Each flaw exposed was a lesson learned. Izuku Yagi didn't fight for glory or recognition. He fought for perfection. One device, one calculated action at a time. Chapter 7 begins. The soft hum of fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above. The classroom was filled with the sounds of idle chatter, papers rustling, and the sharp clack of shoes against tiled floors. Amid it all, Izuku sat at his desk, entirely unfazed by the world around him. His fingers slowly turned the page of the book he was reading, Quantum Mechanisms and Theories of Dimensional Overlap. His eyes scanned each line with sharp precision, his pencil tapping softly against his notebook as he jotted down notes in the margins. One student sneered from across the room, questioning whether Izuku even understood the material. Another laughed, suggesting he was just pretending to look smart because he had no work. The snickers spread across the room, cruel and calculated. But Izuku didn't acknowledge them. He was too focused to give them the reaction they were looking for. His attention remained fixed on the page, turning each with deliberate, measured care. One of the boys muttered a disdainful remark as they turned away, clearly disappointed by Izuku's lack of response.
Alright, forgot
It
about
was
all
all
this stuff.
predictable. Every day, the same taunts, the same mockery. But today, something about the book caught his attention. The text suggested that if reality is a series of frequencies and vibrations, one could harmonize those frequencies to create the bridge, a portal, from one point in space to another. Izuku's pencil paused mid-tap. His eyes narrowed slightly as he processed the sentence, moving at his usual clinical pace. For a moment, everything else in the room ceased to exist. His body, still and unmoving, reflected the same mechanical precision that defined his thoughts. The idea was intriguing, but its potential had to be evaluated, refined, tested. His pencil resumed its motion, now writing down his thoughts and observations, his mind already running through a sequence of possibilities, each more calculated than the last. But before he could delve deeper, the sound of the classroom door sliding open broke his concentration. The teacher had arrived. Izuku's hand moved without hesitation, slipping the book into his bag with precise, methodical motions. His mind remained fixed on the theory, but the situation required no further action. The teacher's presence was a distraction, and Izuku had no intention of engaging with it. The teacher instructed everyone to take their seats, and the classroom settled into an uneasy quiet. Izuku adjusted his posture, mentally filing away the new concept for later, where it would be analyzed further in the silence of his workshop. His focus had never wavered. Even now, as the noise of the classroom returned, his mind was already several steps ahead, processing the implications of what he had just read. The day crawled forward, but like all things, it eventually ended. The bell rang, students rushed out, and Izuku remained behind, quietly packing his books. He intended to go to the workshop today, but first, he had one last note to finish copying. The door slid open. 3 figures stepped in. Izuku recognized them before he even looked up. Bakugo. Bakugo's voice echoed with its sharp, dangerous edge. Izuku glanced toward him, unimpressed, and noted that Bakugo had arrived just in time for him to need test subjects for some new gadgets. One of Bakugo's lackeys sneered, questioning if they were now Izuku's test subjects, and warned him to watch his mouth. The boy lunged, throwing a wild punch toward Izuku's face. Instead of panicking, Izuku's hand moved with precise calm. A shimmering, hexagonal energy shield formed in front of him, absorbing the punch with a thump. Izuku didn't hesitate. He swept the boy's legs with a low kick, sending him crashing to the ground. The second lackey rushed in, but Izuku raised his hand again. His glove shifted, the red metal panels clicking into place like clockwork. A concussive shockwave rippled through the air, sending the second boy flying backward. He slammed into a desk, coughing as he hit the ground. Izuku remarked to himself that he was learning as he shook his hand free from the glove's locking mechanism. Bakugo grinned, sparks crackling from his palms as he crouched low. He questioned if Izuku thought he was foolish enough to come at him head-on like last time. Izuku's eyes narrowed, realizing Bakugo was waiting for him to act first. But Bakugo didn't wait. He launched forward, an explosion propelling him toward Izuku. At the last second, he changed direction, veering to Izuku's blind spot. Izuku spun, aiming a kick at Bakugo's face, but Bakugo caught it mid-swing. Bakugo hissed that he had him before a flash of orange light detonated in Izuku's face. The blast sent Izuku flying back into the wall. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling, and the room went quiet. Izuku coughed as he stood, brushing off the dust, and began to speak when the door suddenly slid open. Their teacher walked in, eyes sharp as ever, demanding to know what was going on. Bakugo quickly pointed at Izuku, claiming he started it. The teacher raised an eyebrow, asking if he meant Izuku Yagi, and scanned the room for him. Bakugo spun around, eyes wild, searching every corner of the room. The teacher scowled, instructing them to clean up the mess before leaving without another word. Bakugo's jaw tightened as he noticed a small, faint footprint leading toward the door amid the scattered dust. Outside the school gates, Izuku's silhouette flickered into view like a mirage resolving itself into reality. The faint hum of energy faded as he removed a sleek, matte gray helmet from his head. He ran his fingers along the smooth surface, noticing a small dent near the ear. He muttered to himself that it still needed work as he stuffed it into his bag. Back at his workshop, Izuku sat motionless at his desk, a faint light from the overhead lamp casting sharp shadows across his face. His fingers absent-mindedly traced the edges of the book before him, his mind completely absorbed in its contents. It had taken him hours to read and analyze each word and concept. Yet, despite the depth of the information, it wasn't enough. The theories presented were insightful but incomplete. They were nothing more than fragments of a puzzle he had already begun to piece together, but a crucial piece was still missing. Izuku needed more data, more clarity, more precision. He needed to understand the mechanics fully before he could take any meaningful steps forward. He closed the book, leaning back in his chair, the creak of the leather echoing in the silence of the room. He didn't waste time with idle thoughts or hesitation. This was a problem that required resolution, not deliberation. His eyes flickered over the workshop, scanning the various gadgets and blueprints scattered about, but he knew the answer wouldn't lie there. The information he sought lay beyond the confines of his current surroundings. With a single, decisive movement, he stood and grabbed the book, slipping it into the bag at his side. There was only one place where the knowledge he needed could be found: the city library. The familiar scent of old paper and dust filled his senses as he stepped through the front doors of the city library. The soft hum of fluorescent lights overhead and the faint rustling of pages made the space feel timeless. This was one of the few places where Izuku felt at peace. The librarian glanced up from her desk as he approached, amusement evident in her expression. Izuku gave her a small nod, quietly handing her the book he'd borrowed last week. Her eyes briefly scanned the title, and she commented on his continued interest in science. He didn't respond, heading straight for the science section. He moved with purpose, eyes scanning the spines of books with precision. Quantum fields, wave resonance, harmonic vibrations. His gaze locked onto one title: Wave-Particle Duality and Spatial Overlap. He pulled it from the shelf, running his fingers over the cover before tucking it under his arm. Continuing his search, he added a few more books to his growing stack. Once satisfied, he carried them to the front desk. The librarian raised an eyebrow at the sheer number of books. She expressed her surprise at his choices, noting that most kids his age were outside playing.
With the YouTube Music app, you can start a radio station with up to 30 artists. Go ahead, be your time. Try 1 month free.
Playing. Izuku, however, remained focused and stated his intention to borrow all of them. The librarian shook her head with a smile as she scanned the books and handed them back to him, cautioning him to be careful with the load. Izuku nodded and walked out, arms full of knowledge. Back at his workshop, Izuku unpacked his books and notes onto his desk. He sat down, picked up Wave-Particle Duality and Spatial Overlap, and flipped to the introduction. His pencil was ready, his notepad open beside him. Hours passed. The room grew colder as the sun dipped below the horizon, but Izuku didn't notice. Pages turned, notes were scribbled, and sketches filled the corners of his notebook. Every so often, he would mutter to himself as he connected one concept to another. At some point, he glanced at the clock and saw that it was already midnight. His body ached from being in one position for too long. Stretching his arms, he felt a small pop in his back. It was time to head home. He packed his notes into his bag, ensuring every sheet of paper was accounted for before locking up the workshop. The house was dim, save for the soft glow of the kitchen light. Izuku quietly stepped inside, placing his bag on the floor. On the counter, a plate of food awaited him, kept warm beneath a lid. It was rice, miso soup, and some fried fish. He stared at it for a moment, his gaze distant. Slowly, he lifted the lid and sat down. As he ate, his mind wandered back to Dr. Kuroda's book. The phrase, "if reality is just frequencies," echoed in his mind, revealing new possibilities with each repetition. His hand moved automatically, picking up rice with his chopsticks, but he wasn't truly present. He was still in his workshop, drawing diagrams on the wall, calculating frequencies, and testing theories. After finishing his meal, he quietly placed the dishes in the sink and headed upstairs. His bedroom was modest. A simple bed, a desk, and a corkboard with more notes pinned to it. He sat at his desk and pulled out his newest acquisition, Resonance Theory, a deeper look. He read until the glow of dawn crept through his window. Several weeks later, the scene in his workshop had changed dramatically. Pages of notes were no longer scattered randomly. They were organized in a system only Izuku could understand. Each page was pinned to the wall in a meticulous sequence. Equations connected with red string formed a web of logic. The messy chaos of earlier weeks had evolved into something greater. Izuku stood in the center of it all, a pencil tucked behind his ear, his eyes scanning the entire layout like a general surveying a battlefield. His notebook lay on the table beside a new set of sketches. There was the frame, the containment field, the emitters, and the power source. Each piece had been theorized, calculated, and improved. No longer random thoughts, no longer mere ideas. This was something else entirely, a blueprint. He stepped back, arms crossed. The weight of everything, weeks of sleepless nights, relentless research, and failed concepts, settled on his shoulders, but it didn't feel heavy. He glanced at the notebook one last time, a grin tugging at the corner of his lips. No more reading, he thought. His gaze shifted to his tools and raw materials, his eyes sharp with resolve. It was time to build. Chapter 8 begins. The workshop buzzed faintly with the rhythmic hum of Izuku's tools as he stood before the skeletal frame of his latest experiment, the portal. This was the third iteration, each more refined than the last. His hands moved with surgical precision, securing each component with mathematical exactness, as his sharp, calculating eyes assessed every piece of the puzzle that was slowly taking form. The workshop was a blend of organized chaos, with blueprints pinned to the walls and diagrams of frequency harmonization and spatial resonance theories covering every available surface. There was no room for distraction here. Each failure, each adjustment, was a necessary step toward the perfect design. Piece by piece, the portal took shape. Every bolt was tightened to perfection, every wire connected with a precision only Izuku could achieve. The process was methodical, mechanical, and devoid of hesitation. Hours bled into each other unnoticed as the device gradually neared completion. When the final bolt was secured, Izuku stepped back and surveyed the structure. It was a towering frame, lined with harmonic emitters and a gleaming containment field generator. His sharp gaze lingered for a moment, inspecting the mechanics. There was no pride in his observation, only cold calculation. Turning to the control panel, he tapped a few buttons, feeding power into the portal systems. A faint hum echoed through the workshop as the first surge of energy passed through. But nothing happened. Izuku's fingers hovered over the controls, his mind already anticipating the failure. The emitters flickered weakly, barely responding to the influx of energy. Then, without warning, a surge of sparks erupted from the base of the portal. Metal twisted with a loud crack, followed by the acrid smell of burnt components. The explosion sent debris flying, but Izuku's movements were precise, instinctive, his energy shield flaring to life around him just in time to deflect the worst of the blast. When chaos subsided, the workshop fell into a heavy silence. Izuku deactivated his shield, calmly approaching the wreckage of the portal. His gaze was detached, methodical, as he crouched down and examined the twisted components. Picking up a fragment of metal, he scrutinized the edges, noting the areas of stress and damage. Insufficient stabilization was his cold, clinical observation, noting the frequency misalignment in the secondary emitters. Straightening, Izuku's eyes scanned the workshop. The remains of the portal were scattered across the floor, but there was no hint of frustration. He merely gathered the debris, feeding it into the renewable metal device that hummed softly in the corner of the room. The machine absorbed the material, breaking it down and reconstructing it into usable resources. In minutes, the pieces were restored, deposited into a new tray beside the device. Izuku wasted no time. He immediately returned to his workbench, jotting down notes as his mind moved forward, calculating the next steps. Reworking the frequency calibration was his next focus, adjusting equations and refining his designs. With no sense of time passing, he continued working. By noon, the portal's design had been reworked, the flaws identified, and the next course of action clear in his mind. Without acknowledging the clock or the fact that his body was beginning to feel the weight of exhaustion, Izuku packed his notes and left the workshop. The day's work had concluded, but it was only a small step in his greater goal. The next day, Izuku bypassed school entirely.
Shit, where did I
His
put
mind had
it?
already moved past the need for social interactions. School was a necessary inconvenience. He would attend just enough classes to avoid suspicion, and most of his time was spent within the confines of his workshop, relentlessly refining the portal. His body never acknowledged the passage of time. No hunger, no thirst, no fatigue, only the pursuit of perfection mattered. Izuku spent countless hours refining his portal project. His understanding of quantum mechanics, spatial resonance, and harmonic frequencies expanded with each failure. When a test failed, he didn't react with frustration. Instead, he dissected the error, made adjustments, and moved forward with even more precision. Each misstep was data, a valuable lesson in the pursuit of perfection. He had no need for validation. His results, no matter how small, were enough. Results were the only truth. And the portal was his singular truth. Every time the portal fizzled out or destabilized, Izuku meticulously rebuilt it, reworking the emitter frequencies, recalculating energy output, and adjusting the containment field. He explored new materials, experimented with different power sources, and even constructed new tools to measure energy fluctuations with unparalleled accuracy. His knowledge grew exponentially, as did his obsession with creating the perfect portal. As the months passed, the outside world began to fade even further into the background. He had long stopped keeping track of the calendar, and family events felt like meaningless interruptions in his quest.
No, I guess I haven't
He
been
didn't
here
need to be
before.
acknowledged, nor did he care. It wasn't that he hated his family, they simply did not matter in the equation of his goals. His interactions with them had become automatic, mechanical. He existed beside them, but never within the same world. It was during one of these long stretches of isolation that his routine was disrupted. A rare family gathering, an event that seemed inconsequential in the grand scheme of his work. Izuku was on his way to the workshop, the steady rhythm of his footsteps marking the start of another day filled with experimentation. The sun had barely risen, and the cool morning air hung around him as he made his way across the beach. His thoughts were already absorbed in the calculations for his next portal iteration. Suddenly, his mother's voice called from behind him, pulling him from his thoughts. She mentioned that it was his sister's birthday and asked if he could help out. Her tone was casual and almost distant, as if it were an afterthought. Her words felt as hollow as the smiles that accompanied them. Izuku didn't react immediately. Her voice
Okay guys, I'm going to end the video so that I could watch it over and see what the chords were. Okay, bye. I'll start another video.